Not too long ago, I sat down to watch Toy Story 4 in order to make yet another video about how it sucked, how it was a completely unnecessary addition to the franchise overall, and has no value. That it ruins characters such as Woody or Bo Peep or Buzz, and spoils and invalidates endings that have been built to over decades worth of storytelling, yada yada yada. The usual screed. I'm sure you know the type I'm talking about. It's the kind of discussion that has dominated Toy Story 4, both in the lead up when it was first announced that they were following up on the franchise after the classic farewell to childhood ending of Toy Story 3, and continued through the immediate aftermath of the film's release by salty fanboys and nostalgia goggle enthusiasts such as myself. I spent about 5 years ripping on the movie despite only having watched it that one time in the cinema, only to discover upon my rewatch rather recently that I actually rather enjoyed it overall. Yeah, there were probably some moments that I wasn't a massive fan of, and I do think it somewhat wrecks the ending of Toy Story 3. At the same time though, I think it can stand on its own merits very well, and is a very worthy member of the franchise overall. The arc for Woody's character actually made a lot of sense when I watched it back, and I found the ending to be very sweet and beautiful. On top of that, the whole story of Gabby Gabby and the horror elements of the antique store, they were really well integrated. So after that rewatch, I had to sit there feeling a bit embarrassed for a little while and made a video where I was very happy to admit I'd been wrong about all of my thoughts on Toy Story 4, and I moved on with my life. So time marched on until the other day when there was yet another tiny scrap of news about the upcoming film, Toy Story 5. This time, with the release of a screenshot/concept art of an army of Buzz Lightyear toys emerging from the back of what looked to be a shipping container. I guess an old shipping container, as the toys are rather old by that point surely, as the original Buzz was just a movie tie-in toy, wasn't he? They don't seem to look any different to him judging by these pictures, so I figure they're from that batch. So my first instinct on this is that this is going to be a bit derivative of the arc of Toy Story 2, where there's an alternate Buzz who kidnaps Buzz and takes his place in the group. It doesn't really jump out at me as something that's a massively interesting plot hook. It's also something I'm not really sure is going to pair all that well with the idea of toys versus tech, but then again, I've been wrong before. Something I think would have been fun to see would have been the original scrapped concept from Toy Story 1, way back in the early 90s of their first drafts and storyboards, that had presented Woody as more of a dictatorish type of character. One who rules Andy's room with an iron fist. I think that would have been fun to see. Not with Prime Woody, of course, but a different Woody. Maybe a new Woody toy somehow ends up in Bonnie's room, they all think it's original Woody, only for him to have a darker side. I don't know, it'd probably need some workshopping, and he'd need some goons, wouldn't he? Then again, at the same time, that would also rehash both Stinky Pete from Toy Story 2 and Lotso the Bear from Toy Story 3. Maybe they did manage to keep that sort of storyline, simply repurposed into something a touch different. Back on topic! I've made a few different videos talking about the potential of Toy Story 5, and now looking back, maybe I've been a little bit harsh on it the way I was massively harsh on Toy Story 4, when it was clear on a rewatch I'd been blinded by my own bias. I just couldn't see that it stood well on its own as a film, and is not objectively shit. So I guess I want to go back over what we know about Toy Story 5, and try to give a fairer take on whether I think it's going to be any good at all, or whether it's just going to be a black mark on the franchise as a whole. In that first video I made, I talked quite a lot about how Pixar was well and truly milking the franchise for all it's worth, that it was a cash grab and little else, and I do somewhat stand by my thoughts on that. It is a cash grab franchise, and they are milking it for all it's worth. I think that's just a fact of life at this point. However, that says nothing about the quality. Just look at the numbers! Toy Story has always been a big money spinner for Pixar. The first film's success, grossing close to $400 million during an era of Disney dominance in the mid-90s, truly made the studio. Then the sequel came out in 1999 and was a massive hit as well. Grossing $511 million, it became Pixar's most successful film of all time at the time of its release, and was the third highest grossing animated film ever after Lion King and Aladdin. Then we had a nice long break between installments. 11 years or so between the release of Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3. What do you know? Yet another record breaker. It grossed over $1 billion, making it the first animated film to ever do that, making it the highest grossing animated film of all time until the release of Frozen, and of course, Pixar's most successful film at the time. In the years since then, the box office for animated films really has picked up. We've had films pushing closer and closer to that mythical $2 billion mark. One day, we are going to see an animated film cross that threshold. The current leader, Inside Out 2, is about $300 million off the pace, so it's not going to cross the mark, but perhaps someday, something will. In this era of sequels, which all seem to be proven draws, it's going to happen sooner than we'd think. Regardless, Toy Story 4 did not hit those highs. It grossed about the same as Toy Story 3, but it's not a case of being diminishing returns or going backwards. After all, $1 billion is still $1 billion, and it still topped Toy Story 3, even if only slightly. So yes, the cash cow is certainly being milked for all it's worth, but is that even a bad thing? As long as the films are of high quality and people enjoy them, I have no problem with them making more. But profitability is not always aligned with quality. I have no doubt that Toy Story 5 is going to do big business at the box office. Realistically, I wouldn't be shocked if it ends up pushing much higher than Toy Story 4 did. Maybe it won't challenge for the record, but I think it could do Frozen 1 numbers at least. Maybe you think I'm overrating the appeal of the franchise a little bit? I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see on that one. When I first looked over the ideas and concept art that were swirling around about Toy Story 5, I was mostly negative about the whole thing. The idea of tech versus toys was interesting in theory, I suppose, but at the same time, we could see Woody appearing in this concept art and whatnot, and so I was suspicious that we were going to see yet another ending backtracked on and spoiled. That was one of my major complaints when I originally was salty about Toy Story 4, that it completely voided the ending of 3. But in the end though, I could admit that they did have a cute ending of 4, where the two toys, Buzz and Woody, were separated from each other for good. It was a massive moment, and so I was thinking that with Woody having left the family, so to speak, it would be a massively cheap moment to simply have him come back in the very next film. In my eyes, it would have invalidated the ending that had in turn invalidated the GOAT ending of Toy Story 3. It had me majorly annoyed. Now though, I think I understand a little bit more. I was jumping the gun, because by having Woody appear in Toy Story 5, it doesn't wipe away the ending of his arc in Toy Story 4. It simply moves it along. It wasn't supposed to be an ending after all, but a new beginning for his character. I always viewed it as a betrayal of his character for Woody to abandon Bonnie. But the second time around I watched it, it made it clear that his time as a toy of a child like Bonnie was over. He was destined for the yard sale or to be given away like Bo was. So it makes sense that part of his development as a toy leads him to become a toy that makes the dreams of others come true, to find them homes and children who will love them, as we see in the credits of 4. Him returning to Bonnie's room briefly doesn't stomp all over that ending. It enhances it because we see that he's going to try to help Bonnie's room against the menace of technology. He's going to try to preserve the happiness of all his friends, which maintains his characterization and his ending in Toy Story 4. So I do admit I was wrong about all that, but at the same time, I can't help but still feel a little bit apprehensive about Toy Story 5. The concept itself is toys versus tech, but then also having that army of Buzz Lightyears potentially there as major villains. These ideas seem like they're almost from two different films. One idea, which would be set in Bonnie's room with a large cast of toys, where they all work together to try to recapture Bonnie's attention towards them, as opposed to always being glued to her iPad. But then there's the other idea with the army of Buzz Lightyears, which feels like it would be from some nomad toy adventure with Woody and Bo. As of right now, it seems like they're two separate story beats. But then again, I guess if you break down some of the story beats of Toy Story movies, I guess you could say that about any of them. I mean, Toy Story 1, Andy's room, to Pizza Planet, to Sid's room, for instance. It's a clear sequence of different events, but they're all interconnected slightly. They lead into one another. So how can we connect these two instances, these two seemingly different plot points, into one cohesive whole? Granted, this is all wild speculation and tinfoil for now until we actually know some more, but how about this? Woody and Bo are somehow in town, they find Bonnie's house where they visit all the toys. Here we discover that not all is hunky-dory in Bonnie's room. She's gotten an iPad for her birthday or Christmas or something, and thus has started spending a lot less time playing with her toys and using her imagination. Now she's spending hours and hours sitting on her bed, glued to a screen. This culminates in the toys planning some sort of scheme. Ultimately, I don't think that technology should be the major enemy here. Unless the iPad is somehow sentient, it would not be that interesting. And no electronics have been shown to be sentient before. Remember, Rex plays video games in Toy Story 2. So I think the Buzz Battalion will be positioned as the major villain. But there needs to be some sort of way to get the toys, or at least the lead toys, in their path. Perhaps the toys cook up some sort of scheme to try to take out the iPad or win Bonnie back. It ends in disaster, and a few of them get lost. They eventually come across the shipping container filled with old Buzz Lightyear dolls who were never bought, and thus when they come out of stasis, they're a bit different. And they decide to try to conquer this strange alien planet perhaps. I don't know, just spitballing. And you can tie it back into the tech versus toys theme with Bonnie realizing her toys are gone, being very sad, and when they return, she plays with them a lot more. She didn't know what she had until she almost lost it, that kind of thing. I don't know, I think it fits. I kind of just hyped myself up with this. I actually think that Pixar could be cooking with a plot like that, and so I'm really excited to see this movie now. Even if it's completely different, I'm hyped. It's crazy how a single rewatch of the film could change my perspective so wildly, but here we are. And so with all that being said, there isn't much else to say, other than these have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of the idea of Toy Story 5? Are you on board with it? Maybe not. Maybe you think it's going to be a disaster. I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.